Hello and welcome to my build for the Crowmaster, a Beastmaster Primalist focusing on Storm Crows. This is going to be actually a 3-for-1. We're going to do a beginner guide with no gear, a geared advanced guide, and then kind of my story of unrequited love, the build that can't quite be right now. So I'm going to deep dive into the skills and passives, explain how they interact together with respect to crows. But if you want to skip ahead and just see how things play, feel free to go to the demo sections for the beginner and advanced builds. I started this was actually the first build that I went to 100 with. I started off doing something different. I had hopes of doing like a zoo build with like all the companions and just resetting their cooldowns and spamming their ultimates. And as I was leveling, I got crows. You only need 15 points to in your passives to unlock crows. And I had seen them before, and I always thought they were kind of stupid. And I was like, well, if this is my chance to try them out as I'm leveling. And as I did, I was like, these are kind of cool and pretty good. And yeah, I just kind of got taken with them and ended up using them all the way to 100 and then kept on playing with them. So yeah, I think that's, so hopefully you find crows to be fun too. I think that's a big plus to why to play this build in the first place. And you can play them with no gear. You can play them as soon as you get them. They kind of you can adapt to if you want like a really active play style with them, or you can be kind of lazy, and it works either way. Also, we're going to be doing burst damage. Basically, every once in a while we'll do one big hit, and it'll do a lot of damage. So that's very tolerant for like moving around and repositioning without needing to constantly be casting or standing in one place. There are some downsides, of course. Part of it is that we do have a little bit of ramp required to get into our max damage mode, and that's based on chance, which I don't love. I don't like chance-based things. Typically, I want just consistency. And because we're doing one big hit and we're going to be doing a lot of crit damage, we are kind of susceptible to crit avoidance and dodge chance modifiers for monoliths. Also, this isn't going to be like the most damaging build in the world. I've gotten I'm around 300 corruption, and I could go higher if I really wanted to push things. I don't have all the gear that I want. My gear is kind of garbage still, but it's not going to be, some massive boss killer. It's possible that we could get into a nice monolith runner, but we'll talk about that in the build, the future build. Okay, so let's start by getting into the beginner build, and let's dive right into the Storm Crows. So Storm Crows summons minions up to the companion limit. They are ranged attackers, and their companion ability is Crowstorm. This does one big burst of lightning by default. After a brief delay, this is just as a up and then down. And Crowstorm has a 80 base lightning damage, and it gets added damage at a 400% rate. So if you have 10 spell damage for crows, you'll add 40 damage to the skill. It also has a built-in multiplier scaling with 50% more damage per crow. So definitely incentivizing having more crows and more companions. Mana cost fixed at 38. There's very few ways to reduce that, so it can get mana intensive by default. Crows themselves are kind of cool. They scale off both attunement and strength. Lightning by default, and they are spell minions. Yeah, they have actually decent scaling. Okay, so what specializations do we look at? First thing we get into is a shock chance. This is a one-pointer. There's plenty of other sources of shock. Lightning resistance is not key, but we go to 2 points right for getting into Frigid Wings. This is going to convert our crows to cold minions. That's why we have the cold tag here. And this is really important for without gear. There's just way better support within the natural skills of the Primalist to support cold minions than there is lightning. This is a freeze rate multiplier. I'd rather just kill things, and Storm Crows is a very passive or specialization point hungry skill. Every point we're going to want to spend in adding damage, so we're not going to go into freezing. Let's go down this path. This is the Crowstorm path. Our first node here is 3 points, 120% more damage. That's another multiplier, and also increases the stun chance. That's very good. It means that you're going to be interrupting even rare bosses with large hits if you don't kill them outright. Expansive Pulse increases the area. That's kind of just a comfort thing. It's definitely nice to have a bigger area. The shock chance, this is getting converted to frostbite because we're cold. That can be useful. What's really interesting is that the shock chance from Crowstorm also gets all the so the frostbite chance gets all the modifiers to damage that Crowstorm has. So you don't see that with the shock chance because that's just an armor shredder or lightning resistance shredder. But with Crowstorm, so for example, here we've got 4 stacks and they're doing a couple thousand damage per tick. But if we just apply them manually, it's just doing a couple hundred damage per tick. So that's the difference. And there's maybe a potential for some damage over time thing with Crowstorm. Not sure. I haven't explored it that much because I went down the crit route instead and just found that to be more immediately satisfying. And then we get to Thunderous Blast. So this is another damage multiplier to Crowstorm, and this is a per crow multiplier. So this is interesting because now we have 2 damage multipliers per crow. And this is actually better than you would expect with just a single multiplier per crow. So if we had here with just Crowstorm, you have 2 crows, you'd get 100% multiplier. 3 crows, you'd go to 150. So you increased your multiplier by 50%. But when you have 2, adding a single crow wouldn't just be a 50% increase because you'd be multiplying each of these multipliers would grow by 50%, and then you'd multiply those 2 together, and you'd get an even bigger number. So this is a very interesting case for the Beastmaster in particular, who's going to specialize in having more crows. The cooldown length, that's fine, but we really don't care about the cooldown. Crowstorm has a long base cooldown. It starts at like 6.8 seconds. And most of the time, we're just not going to care about that. You can also turn Crowstorm into a traversal skill, which is pretty cool because the crows come with you. It's a nice way to move around the battlefield. This is actually a great traversal skill. I'm going to show it in the future build. But right now, we're low on points, and for this beginner build, we're just going to skip it and focus on damage. So going down this route, we have another damage multiplier. This requires the number of frostbite stacks to be 15, in this case, to max out. And this is an interesting point for cold versus lightning. If you do lightning, shock only stacks up to 10 times, and you cannot cap this out. You're going to just cap it at 6% per shock, or 60%, 10 stacks rather. But Frostbite has no cap, and so you can hit that max damage multiplier with Storm Breath if you are cold. This is kind of balancing out the 50% shredding potential for shock, but you don't have to worry about the reduced effectiveness against bosses, which is nice. This is pure lightning, and this takes your lightning modifiers from equipment and gives them to your crows. It goes up to 150%, so that's very effective, but it does not get converted by frigid wings. So this only does lightning damage. It's no use if you are a cold crow. And we're looking at a beginner guide that doesn't care about gear really, so we're skipping that. This is a chain chance for auto attacks. We don't care about auto attacks for this build. Now going down this bottom left arc, we have yet another damage multiplier. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 multipliers plus the built-in one. This is a very low multiplier, but it also gives us a little bit more crit chance. And critical multiplier, that's nice. Sure, I like it. And here, this is what really makes everything work for a crit build, is that we have now 4% per point at additional base crit chance. So we start at 5%. After one proc of this, of Observe and Learn, we're at 25%. And so with an additional 300% crit chance, that would add 75, and we get to 100% crit chance. And that's really where we want to be. You don't need more points. You don't need necessarily to go to 5 points. You can play with this, but because it does stack, which is crazy. But we don't do that many melee attacks, and like I said, I don't really want to be worrying about keeping this up all the time. So I want to just have one proc and then be at my max damage. That's what I want to do. So that's why I put 5 points in here. Over here, this is all basic spell damage multiplier, basic spell damage multiplier. You can go this way, but you are missing out on, 1, 2, and then 3, the innate damage multipliers. And you don't have anything that scales with the number of crows, so I don't really care for the auto attack version, but there's probably a fun build that uses maybe one big crow and chain lightnings it. This might actually be an interesting option if you're going a druid instead of a beastmaster. Let's look up here. So cast speed doesn't affect us. Move speed's nice, but it's really just a prerequisite. Same for dodge rating. Armor shred chance, that's fine, but it's pretty low per point. But 2 points here unlocks 3 new abilities, and they are all amazing. So first of all, Murder of Crows, 4% per point, sounds low, but this is a multiplier per crow. So now, if you have Murder of Crows and Thunderous Blast, you now have 3 multipliers per crow that are all being multiplied together. Fantastic. And this can go up to 120%, even without considering all the other multiplication. Great. Feather Strike, you can see I have 5 crows right now, 100%, still great. If I had the points to get here. Like I said, this is a very, very thirsty specialization. It wants all the points it can get. Feathered Storm, this is fantastic. We already want strength to scale our crows. We want strength for our own armor, and now each point of strength gives armor shred chance and effectiveness. So that means that, for example, with 25 points of strength, our crows would have a 100% chance to shred armor, and each shred would be worth 200 instead of 100. Amazing, because there's other sources of armor shred that you can get for your crows. You can easily hit like the max that you need for armor shred, which is about 10,000, I think, 100 stacks of plain armor shred is usually good enough. So 1 pointer, fantastic. Even with the reduced effectiveness, you can still pretty reliably get 50% more damage from this point right here. Huntsman, another insane node, 15% multiplier up to 4 times, up to 60% multiplier, and it stacks 3 times for 180% more damage. Crazy. It's multiplier, 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 multiplier. The only downside is that it's another 20% chance on melee hit. So, not super reliable, but definitely if I had the points, I would fill it out for sure. And then finally going over here, so we have base spell damage only for lightning, and you have to take this passive to get it to actually affect your crows. And it only lasts for 8 seconds, and 4 seconds with this, and it's a 10-second cooldown. That's 40% uptime. That's garbage for 9 spell damage. Don't do it. This is for supporting totems. The whole point is to support your totems here. Intelligence per crow, that's kind of interesting, I guess. You could get 60 int if you had 6 crows, but I don't know what I'd do with it. Not on this build anyway. This is for supporting Shaman. Allies. Okay, this is for buffing non-companions. I'm sorry. Interesting. Anyway, as you can see, I don't take this path for what I'm doing here. And then this is just support, so adding in more healing for your crows. Okay, so that's crows. Multipliers everywhere. Go cold. Go crits. Cry that you don't have enough points to be up here yet. Now, how do we support our crows and actually get to casting Crowstorm? Well, first route, and this is the simplest route because you get this with like 5 points, I think, in the passives, is Eterra's Blessing. This is going to heal your target, and also if it's a minion, give it a damage boost, which is nice. I'll take 100% extra damage. It's just an increase, though. And we have a couple of interesting options. First priority, move speed, attack speed. We don't care about those too much, but encourage. 100% chance to refresh companion abilities. This is why we don't care about the cooldown of our Crowstorm, because we can cast it, and then we can reset the cooldown. Now, this is kind of annoying, because if our enemies are up here, we have to go back and forth and back and forth. Don't like it. Also, it's totally draining our mana, because this is a 38 skilled mana, a 38 mana cost skill. If you are in combat, let's see if we go down here, we're in combat, one strategy is leap over and flank your crows, or flank the target with your crows, and now you can do Crowstorm, Blessing, and it's very quick. It's just a way to dump your mana when you have it, but can be a nice little damage boost. Blessing of Eterra. So this is basically how I got through leveling. Is I had my crows, I would reset their cooldown and just kill things with Crowstorm. There's more goodness here too. A self-heal, that's great because if we're casting all the time on our minions, on our crows, we also want to heal ourselves. Triage automatically targets lowest health ally. That sounds good, but what it doesn't tell you is that it only works if the minion, it will only target enemy or allies that are not at high health state. So they can't be in the top 35% of their health bar. And then it will target based on percentage, not absolute value. So if you do invest in this and your crows are all at full health, well, it just targets you and it becomes useless. This only works with Spriggans. This can help down companion resurrection, but it always feels a little wonky to use. And if all your crows die at the same time, they're usually in the same space, and you can just kind of walk over them and resurrect them all by standing on them. This makes your companions taunt. Our crows are not tanks. They're durable, but they're not tanks, and we don't want a 12-second cooldown. So you have kind of an extra healing effectiveness, that's fine. Eterra's Blessing already gets increased healing from your attunement, and also mana efficiency from attunement. So this isn't the most valuable thing. This is mana efficiency, which also pales kind of in comparison. If I already have a 93%, I don't really need another 50% for 5 points. But you do have the choice between Ancestral Renewal, which makes healing totems, and then a chance to heal allies when you actually cast the blessing. The reason we go for Overgrowth instead of Ancestral Renewal is that this creates healing totems, and that makes targeting kind of annoying. It's very frustrating to cast Eterra's Blessing on a healing totem when you meant to target your crows. So I try to keep totems out of here and just focus on healing the crows. Purge is a fantastic one-pointer. We can just, if we get armor shredded or something, or burned, we can just quick tap W and heal ourselves. And cleanse ourselves. Efflorescence, this turns it into a heal over time. I don't love it because when I'm hurting, and then casting Eterra's Blessing on myself, I want it to just be instantaneous. And Regrowth, though, casts Eterra's Blessing again when the efflorescence wears off. And this is actually pretty cool because it actually triggers Encourage when it wears off. So for one cast of Eterra's Blessing, you get 2 resets of the cooldown. One when you cast it initially, and one after 4 seconds. I'll get into this more in the future build. We don't care about out of mana cost. If you're out of mana, we're in trouble and don't want to there's no point in casting Eterra's Blessing because we don't have enough mana to cast Crowstorm. This allows you to go into Spriggan form. We'll talk about that in the future build too, and still use Eterra's Blessing. The rest are minion specific on Wolf and Bear. Don't really care about Haste and Frenzy on the Crow. Knockback enemies, we don't want to do that because we do want to be in melee range. We want people bunched up. We don't have these companions, so it doesn't apply to us. This is nice, but not reliable enough to invest in. Same for stun immunity. I mean, I would get this if it was a 1-pointer anywhere else, but not here. Not after spending 3 points here. And this only applies to your Scorpion. These two affect your own spells. We don't really do spell damage. And we don't transform right now. So that is Eterra's Blessing. Next way we support Storm Crows, kind of the holy trinity of support here, is Swipe. You probably know this if you're familiar with Primalists at all. Swipe, we go down this path over here to the left. We get extra damage we don't care about, and a cooldown, which is unfortunate, but then we get to Primal Resonance. And now, whenever we swipe, we heal our nearest companion, and it uses its companion ability. So we had some health leech here, we had some increased area just to make sure we hit things, but the real key here is when we swipe, we also cast Crowstorm. And now we want to be meleeing anyway to get that Observe and Learn bonus, and now we get it, and we are also casting Crowstorm every second or so. For the rest of Swipe, these are 2 great points to spend. It really helps on boss fights just to knock off that last little 14%. This is damage. These 2 go into totems, which we don't care about. 1-pointer for an extra 30% area every 3 seconds. That's fine. Totems. These nodes. So you can, if you had lightning crows, you might want to support them with this extra shocking on your attacks, but not really. Everything else is doing more damage there, which we don't care about our own damage so much. Just a little bit to help us leech. Other big helper is, so these 2 bleeds and physical shreds aren't helping us, but the duality of nature does help us quite a bit, actually. at least gives us some consistent mana regen for when we are casting Crowstorm. 9 per hit, that's pretty good. You don't get the health, that's only if you're transformed. This only affects you if you are summoning wolves. Same here. But these 3 points, spending 3 points here is not bad. It makes sure that you have this global attack and cast speed. It's definitely decent. Everything else is adding more damage. And so that this is your core, so that we swipe, blessing, cast, swipe, etc. For your next support skill, you have a few options actually. First, let's talk about what I chose right now for Warcry. This is a fantastic support skill if you don't have gear. And that's because of this branch over here in the top left. Increased area, make sure all your crows get hit. Increased crit chance. Okay, we have to get this to 300%. We started off at 20, so we needed 280 more. Here we take 50, we need 230 to go to get to perfect crits. We turn our Warcry into cold, and this is helpful because I actually like this for the no knockback. Because we're doing melee, we don't really want to knock people away. You could spend 2 points here to pull instead of knockback, but the pull is pretty weak, and this is only 1 point instead of 2 points. So great. And then we unlock the cold boosts. Here's 250% increased damage for 4 seconds. So by default, we have a 10-second cooldown on Warcry. So it doesn't sound great, but this is a lot of cold damage. Our minions deal cold damage. And this kind of helps us. So if we look at our scaling, we've got almost 300% increased damage from Attunement and Strength right now. Plus 250 from Warcry, that's like 500% damage scaling. That means that even 100% from gear is only going to do an extra like 20% total damage increase. So this really is helpful when you don't have gear by getting us to a baseline comfortable level of increased damage. And then this little 1-pointer gives us a 100% crit chance for any cold minions and 100% chill chance. So now we needed 230, now we need 130% crit chance to be a perfect. And the chill chance is great because it's going to reduce the amount of damage that you're taking. This doesn't matter because you have to crit to rewarp Warcry, and honestly, we don't need to reset its cooldown. Instead, we're going to go this way, and we're going to look at we're only attacking like once every second and a half, so there's just 5% chances. No, don't do it. This doesn't matter that much. This is adding not bleed, but this actually adds frostbite because of Jormung's Wrath. That is helpful in helping trigger Storm Breath max damage, and it gets us to Shallow Breath, which takes away the freeze, takes away the fear and the stuns, but reduces the cooldown to 5 seconds. So with a little bit more cooldown reduction, you see we're under 4 seconds, and we can keep this Frost Claw and Bringer of Winter up permanently. We missed out on this because we aren't freezing. This requires things to be frozen to get that damage bonus. And this is nice. It's more efficient than points in Eviscerating Howl if you wanted to get more Frostbite stacks, but typically we don't need to invest here. If you go down this route, this is Fearing. We don't care about that. This is Haste and Frenzy. It's useful. I would take it. We can turn it into a totem. Again, we don't really want more totems, but this is potentially useful if you go down. Well, it's mixed. So if you go here, Juggernaut. Every time you cast Warcry, you're invulnerable for a second. So that's like you're invulnerable quite a lot of time when you have a 3.3 second cooldown. And you can get this lower if you had better gear. If you go Totemic Heart, you do not get Juggernaut. There's no invulnerability. The U becomes the totem. So that's really why I don't go here, and why I keep Juggernaut. There are good things. If you did take the totem, you can do Debilitating Shout, which applies Frailty. That's even more damage reduction, which is fantastic. And then you can heal everybody. You need to take Invigorate for the totems to heal, but it's still useful. It's a lot of healing, and it's doubled on low health. That combos really well with Primalist in general, because Primalist has a bunch of reduced damage like at low health, and it synergizes with Endurance really well. This is a great node, and I just don't really have the points to put in it right now, and because I'm using it for damage. And we can also cleanse only on ourselves though, so much like the Juggernaut, this is a selfish thing. This only affects wolves and scorpions, and this is a Maelstrom bonus. Over here, this is all self-damage boosting. We don't care about it. Yeah, so these are our support skills. And now for our last skill, we do something a little silly, and we take Summon Wolves. Why do we do that? Purely because of Pack Hunters. This gives us an extra companion, and because we know crows scale with more crows, this is very good for us. You don't have to do this. There are other options. When we specialize in a skill we don't use, it gives us a free spot on our skill bar. Right now I have Fury Leap just for the traversal skill. But let's talk about the other things that could go here instead of wolves. We could just specialize Fury Leap. 15 flat spell damage is fantastic, because that's 60 damage essentially because of the 400% scaling on Crowstorm, almost doubling it. Plus we get Frenzy. We don't really care about attack speed, but we do get some healing and cleansing for the whole team. So regardless of range, that's very nice. Our crows do not leap with us, but there are some options here. We'll talk about this more in the advanced build. Yeah, it's a nice option, but it's simpler. So it has a 6-second cooldown by default, and this is only a 3-second buff, so you don't have 100% uptime on it. And I just like the consistency of the wolf. And also, as you get more spell damage from equipment, the Fury Leap damage matters less. Frenzy Totem is the other option for what you could specialize instead of wolves. That gives you a pretty cool option over here. The Frenzy doesn't matter that much, but you have this specialty right here in Furious Cry. That is going to refresh your companion ability just like Eterra's Blessing did. What's cool is that it happens when you summon the Frenzy Totem, and so you don't need to target anybody. It just pop it down and then cast your Crowstorm. There's another option, couple of interesting points here. More duration lets you get potentially multiple totems out at once, and that matters if you take Healing Pulse. So this makes every second each totem has a 20% chance to cast Eterra's Blessing. So that's a chance to reset your cooldowns again, and if you had regrowth, potentially reset them twice. It's very cool, but it's only 20% chance, and it's a random ally. So if you had 2 totems, they could buff each other, they could cast it on you. It's just not reliable. So it's interesting, especially on top of Furious Cry, but not reliable. You can also turn this into a Sloth Totem, which you have 2 options: Sloth Totem, or go down here for more minion buffs. The haste is kind of interesting. I like it, but this buff is okay. More resistances for your companions. Ideally, they shouldn't need them. Slowing enemies is great, and you get more armor shred too, which is very nice, but unnecessary if you get to the point where you have Feathered Storm. So yeah, so it's an interesting choice. Play with it. Maybe you'll like it more, and maybe you'll find it more effective. but this is kind of like the good old reliable choice. And what's nice is since you only need 7 points to get here, you only need 6 points to get here. You can, if you have enough minimum level specialization, you can go ahead and try other stuff and then just revert it back to Wolf if you want to compare easily. Yeah, and I think I'll save the rest for when we talk. Oh, for when we talk about alternatives. I'm not going to go through all the skills. There's just a couple more to talk about. For now, let's continue with the beginner build, and we'll go into passives. So, starting with the Primalist, what are we looking for in passives? We want stats to get scaling for our crows. We want to build our own defensiveness, and then add any damage if we can. That's kind of the general priority. So, out the bat, extra health, increased minion health. This will help without gear. We'll get a little bit of increased minion health. And flat life is always nice. You have a choice here between strength and attunement. Overall, I prefer strength because of the armor increases for myself. But attunement is nice for this node is nice for the extra resistances here. Going up here, this is garbage. 5% increased damage is barely better than a point of strength or attunement. And potion healing, we're not going to care about potion healing. Good to know, you have the chance to dual wield. We're not going to do that in the beginner build, but we will in the advanced. And health multiplier is great, so take this. But the health restored when you hit an enemy, so what stinks is that it's every 3 seconds, and if we look, it does not proc if you are full on health. So it's because of our low attack speed with swiping, this just isn't consistent. So don't worry about it too much. The upgrade is very interesting because 11% increased damage is like 3 points of attunement or strength, but it again only works if you trigger it off of the... So you have to be off of cooldown on swipe and not at full health. I don't know. It's just... didn't feel worth it to me. I'd rather take the extra health for myself and another companion health increased multiplier. 60% is great for 6 points. And the companion speed doesn't come up often, but it's not a bad thing to have. This only affects your damage. These two affect totems. That's your damage. And melee damage, so not really useful. Berserker, I think pretty much every Primalist comes back for 5 points in Berserker. It's a 25% damage reducer multiplier at low health, which synergizes very well with your endurance that we care about so much. Looking at Beastmaster, this is a great node. Strength for scaling and a 16% multiplier for reduced damage. Love it. Dodge rate is fine, but can't compete, and savagery just affects melee damage. One companion, we're not doing that. This is Aspect of the Shark. So let's talk about that real quick. It's an interesting option because you get armor shred chance, and you get to share it with your companions. So you can give all your minions armor shred chance. By default, it lasts 3 seconds and only triggers every 5. So you really need to come up to Ocean Maw, which increases at 7 points, will give you 100% bonus duration and effectiveness. That'll give you a 200% chance to armor shred, and you'll be 100% uptime on your Aspect of the Shark. So this is a nice option if you don't have if you don't have Feathered Storm. But it's just kind of a trade-off. It does synergize a bit with, I think even excessively synergize with Feathered Storm, where you could get 200% chance here, and then you could have that armor shred would be increased effectiveness. I should also mention that all these companion armor shreds are also scaling with the number of minions you have. More minions equals more chances to shred armor. And this is a time when applying Frenzy or increased attack speed would help your minions. But right now, with no gear, it's not a priority. We're going to focus on defensive things instead. So we come up here to Boar Heart. We get Aspect of the Boar when hit, 15%, another 15% reducer, and we can increase that with another 15% reducer. I think that this is additive, that you get 30% rejection, but if someone can correct me on that or has a way to test that, that would be great. And then that Boar Heart helps you so you don't have to rely on being hit in melee. You can actually proc it yourself. Low rate, but it's nice. Doesn't hurt anything, and the strength doesn't hurt anything. These are increasing your own damage. Attack speed and move speed again, not a priority. This is a great node. So this gives you and companions, which are your crows, increased flat health, and also heals every time you use a companion ability. So that means heal, 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 heal. You're triggering this all the time. Great node. And then we get up poison resistance. Good to know it's an option if you needed it for something, but otherwise doesn't affect us. Dodge and haste. This is not bad. That's nice. I like both of those things. But more importantly, we're going to focus on giving ourselves more hit points, and our endurance applies to our companions. This is a keystone passive of the Beastmaster. It makes sure that our companions get our endurance percentage and threshold. It's a great node. And adding more points is even better because you get 10 hit points and 10 endurance threshold per point, plus the base passive endurance threshold you get from just increasing your HP. These are poison nodes. Maybe there's a damage over time build there, but I don't know. Not testing it. More endurance threshold, which we also give our minions, and physical resistance. That's a great investment there. And then the second reason that really makes Beastmaster shine is Cry of the Lynx. So this gives you a flat, you and your minions get a flat crit chance bonus of 30%. And then every time you use your companion ability, you all get Aspect of the Lynx. So you only need 3 points to get permanent uptime here, because every time you use your ability, you're going to have Aspect of the Lynx. More points just gets us a little bit more base, a little more increased critical strike chance, and this 30% pairs up with the 20% in the Crowstorm specialization and the 50% in the Warcry specialization, and then Aspect of the Lynx itself gives 100% increased critical strike chance, and that's how we get to our perfect 100% all the time crit chance. We also get another 100% stun chance. That's fantastic, because that's going to add up with the Crowstorm's innate 100% bonus in the passive tree. It's just stuns everywhere, crits everywhere. Love it. And then our fourth companion, so one from the Mastery and then one from Nature's Embrace. Another solo. These two nodes are more for if you want to do like a bear thorn shield, lead bear, whatever. Then you'd get these, but not for crows. They are the opposite of what we want for crows. Maybe melee crows though. Maybe primal, or maybe druid melee auto attack crows, not melee, but auto attack crows would benefit from this. And then, oh god, let's make Aspect of the Lynx even better and give it 60% critical strike multiplier, plus 60% multiplier to ourselves and our minions. So 6 points, 120% multiplier. We start at 200%, so this is another 6 points, 50% more damage. Very efficient. Great. Up here in our last tier, we have another strength dump. That's fine. It increases our melee damage. That's fine. Healing on crit. Well, we're going to crit a lot, so this is a nice option. But we needed this to get up there, so once we are at the end of our tree, it's a possibility. Good to keep it in mind, because 15% healing on crit, that's not bad. You can also increase the duration of our aspects, but there's better ways to do that. I guess this would help the boar. That's the main thing you get here, but it's not really worth investing in. This is for if you have a lot of attack speed and are stacking aspect of the shark, you can do that, but that's not for a slow swipe build. Okay, looking at Druid, more flat endurance percent that eases the burden from our gear and gives us armor and our minions armor too. Great. This is not bad because it adds flat health and mana, and you have another healing mechanism, but do this until you're at your endurance cap for sure. And this is just a increased damage and penetration that's more for, it only affects us, so skip that. We don't do those damage types. This is incredible. Attunement and strength, and at 5 points you get another point to all attributes. I love this. This is a great passive. Here you have some options to increase your healing effectiveness for you and your minions, and your cold damage. These are good. I do like increasing my healing effectiveness because we're healing so much that it just kind of makes sense. And this 8-point bonus here is interesting because it's whenever you cast a spell, it automatically does Eterra's Blessing again. So it's interesting. It does work with movement abilities too, so it could work with turning Crowstorm into a movement ability, but it's a 12-second cooldown, and otherwise it's just not reliable enough to be chasing it. River Spirits helps us with frostbiting if we... Oh, no, it doesn't. Oh, yeah, at 5 points. 5 points, we get an extra frostbite chance. This can help keep up your stacks for Storm Breath if needed, but not a priority. Other than that, cast speed we don't care about. Don't do those damage types. Only affects us. No Rage Decay, it's not affecting us in totems. Nothing else that we really need to worry about here. This is really the key winner. These are nice, and that's pretty good too. As for Shaman, this is a great 8 points to spend just to make sure. It's pretty much the only way to give your minions penetration. So this is always good. This can be useful with totems for the extra armor bonus. And we don't really care about the extra cooldown here for Crowstorm, just because we're resetting its cooldown so much. Shock Chance can help support your Lightning Crows. That doesn't affect us. And the only other thing that really is worth mentioning is Avatar of Thunder, which is 10 lightning spell damage for your crows. This is really good, especially without gear. So if you feel like you're fine on the survivability scale, go ahead and put points up in here. But it requires an extra 12 points invested down here. So 2 here, and then 10 more. And that's just a very high cost to get to Avatar of Thunder. So it's one of those that I always want. Also, if you are using Warcry, it's not going to benefit from your 250% increased damage bonus. So, because it's lightning damage now. So, it's nice to think about. If I was going Lightning Crows, it might be a higher priority. That's really it for passives. So I just want to talk a little bit now about, let's compare why we're doing Beastmaster, and not Druid and Shaman. when I first saw crows, I was like, oh, they're caster minions. They should be a shaman pet or something. And they definitely can be. But shaman has like nothing else to support the crows. If you look at just what scales, like you have one more 16-point spell damage boost. That's great, but that's it. And none of the skills in shaman have any support for minions. Druid's a different story. In particular, Entangling Roots. Entangling Roots has where is it? Here, right here. Yeah, 40 more spell damage. That's very good. That's a lot of spell damage because that's 160 when added on to Crowstorm. I could see this being impactful, especially because you also have Werebear form, which casts Entangling Roots whenever you maul. You have another stacking 200% increased damage boost for minions whenever you maul. You also can pull in your Fury Leap skill tree. So there's a lot of options here between Werebear and Entangling Roots, but that's taking up a lot of your specialization slots. So it'd be Werebear, Entangling Roots, Crows, Swipe, and one other thing. Probably not Wolves. You'd probably want to go the single companion route. Yeah. So definitely interesting, but yeah, I prefer to take full advantage of the multipliers, and the whole point was to make a Beastmaster, a Crowmaster. So yeah, that's the comparison. That's the beginner build. Let's just go do a Monolith real quick. And this is going to be just 200% or 200 corruption rather. We're just going, it's not going to be super impressive, but just to show, oh, wait a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's look at our gear. Okay, what we're actually using on this beautiful build. So we have staff, horn staff is probably the best thing you can do here because of the +1 to all minion skills. For modifiers, spell damage is great for your minions, and cast speed helps you with Eterra's Blessing. This is garbage, but you can get increased spell damage for crows here. That would be the first priority, followed by health and armor. This is basically chosen for its innate physical resistance and necrotic resistance, and then looking for health and then extra minion stats. Greatwood coats are really all you want. It's tempting to take something else like a cooldown reduction coat, but you need that spell damage. And you really want max spell damage on it too. This is the piece where we have plus to Storm Crow, and then after that you can take options like, so this critical strike multiplier is fine. You could also take just flat vitality, because we're already at 320% crit multipliers for our minions, so 22% is not really impactful terribly. And then you're looking for health and armor on the suffix side. Rings, we definitely want opal rings to get the cooldown reduction, and the +2 helps us, so that's 16% extra damage scaling, plus all the other benefits from having vitality, attunement, and strength. And then I usually use my rings to fill out my endurance and endurance threshold. So here we're at a little over 2k life, and we need to be at 60%, and then any endurance threshold is a bonus. In retrospect, I probably would rather take flat health than endurance threshold. I was just very into endurance threshold when I started this and testing it out. And both rings, same priorities. For a belt, having armor is always good, and then the main thing is having cooldown recovery on these two, belt and boots. So that's what's going to get you to a lower cooldown on your Warcry and your swipe. So very important. I also built mana regeneration when I started out because I was manually casting my Crowstorm so much. I would not do that anymore. I wouldn't recommend that. I'll just look for minion boosts and stat boosts and increased health, or hybrid health, and more stat boosts. I don't have move speed on these boots. That's probably because I was using movement skills, or Crowstorm as a movement skill. Nothing on this helps me except for the cold and necrotic resistance. Again, go for health stats and minion stats. And these are nice. We don't really need the void resistance because of blessings. So take the endurance gloves. They'll help out with gearing. And look for same things, health, armor, and increased minion stats. Yeah, so that's my absolute garbage. Like, only have 3 modifiers on this. Now, but that's okay, because we got all those good stats from our passives and our skills. For idols, the main priority for me is looking for these agility keywords. That's going to give you critical strike avoidance, and you need at least 3 2 grand and a large, or 2 huge and a large, to get to 100% crit avoidance for you and your minions. If you can't get good rolls, you can also get another large minion, or another large idol, and that'll get you to 100%. After that, this helps freeze up, some gear and the blessing, so that you don't need to take crit avoidance, and so that your minions get it too. There's other configurations here. That's just how I did it. For prefixes, this can drop. Huge idols can drop with Link's increased effectiveness. That would be amazing. Give you and your minions more crit chance and crit damage. Would love to see that someday. On the large idols, you can get extra health, always good. And then just fill the rest out with more health, and resistances if you need them. There are also idols that add crit chance. You can use that to balance out your specializations and passives if necessary. And then for blessings, so this one could really be anything. You can take lightning resistance, but I've never needed it. Mana actually helps with my future build that I can't do yet, so that's what I'm at. Void resistance, this is a minimum roll. Try to get better than that. And I'm just doing all resists here because I don't need the crit avoidance. Endurance threshold, that's fine. It could also be percent armor. Percent armor is probably better. But 137 is a lot of endurance threshold, so hard to know. Flat armor is great. Go with it. Yeah. There are things like cold resist shredding. I think that's Age of Winter that does cold resist shredding. You could try that, but our attack speed and number of hits are so low that it's not going to be really consistent. So that's what I do. Okay, that's it. I think that's everything there for our supporting stuff. You can tell that I'm still looking for gloves. That there is definitely a reason for that. That we'll talk about in the advanced build when we get into uniques. Okay, let's go do this thing. Oh, it's an arena too. Okay, cool. Just gonna load this echo. Take a sip of water because I've been talking for an hour. Okay, great. And we're just going to walk around. We're going to cast Crowstorm. Sometimes, mostly we'll just punch things and they'll die. Just make sure that our Warcry is up. If my health starts to drop, sure, I'll cast Eterra's Blessing on myself. But, as you can see, Corruption 200, everything just kind of dies still. The real problem is going to be coming at bosses, and that is something I'm not going to record because it's kind of a slow process. And for bosses, we're going to need more gear to really get in there. As you can see, I'm very rarely casting. The way I look at Crowstorm is like if there's maybe some ranged minions, maybe if we get a pack of ranged minions, I will cast it just to kind of take them out without having to walk over there. Otherwise, I will use it to double hit these bigger minions, enemies, I should say. We could jump, why not? Doesn't hurt anything. But you see our health is not moving much. If it does, and we're never in our danger zone of taking endurance in. So all of our healing is just keeping us topped up, keeping our minions topped up. And yeah, and that's it. Okay. Thank you for sticking through with this beginner part. I'm going to go change outfits and we'll go into the advanced mode.